Before we begin, a quick note. The opinions and analysis shared on Truth Seekers are our own interpretations of published research and should not be used as medical, financial, or professional advice. Always consult qualified professionals for decisions affecting your health or well-being.
And with that out of the way, welcome to Truth Seekers. I'm Bill Morrison.
And I'm Alex Barrett. Today is November 10th, 2025, and we're talking about the dark chocolate diabetes claim when healthy people eat healthy food.
Let's get to the truth.
Right, so apparently I can eat dark chocolate and slash my diabetes risk by 21%. This is genuinely the best health news I've heard all year.
I know, right? When I saw that headline in December, I literally went out and bought the fancy dark chocolate. Then I actually read the study.
Oh no, you're about to ruin chocolate for me, aren't you?
Not ruin it, but that 21% figure, it's doing a lot of heavy lifting. And the media coverage left out some pretty critical details.
Of course they did. Let me guess, the headline and the actual study are two completely different things.
Pretty much. So this was published in the BMJ in December 2024. Huge study from Harvard following over 111,000 nurses and health professionals for up to 30 years. The finding? People who ate 5 or more servings of dark chocolate per week had a 21% lower risk of developing type 2 diabetes compared to people who rarely or never ate it.
5 servings a week, that's what, a square of chocolate most days?
About that, yeah. One serving is roughly an ounce, so we're not talking massive amounts. And the study found this nice dose response relationship: more dark chocolate, lower diabetes risk. It hit CNN, Eating Well, all the major outlets.
And people absolutely want this to be true. I mean, who doesn't want permission to eat chocolate for their health?
Exactly. Which is why we need to look at what this study actually shows. Because here's the first thing: this is an observational study, not a randomized controlled trial.
Meaning they didn't randomly assign people to eat chocolate or not eat chocolate. They just watched what people naturally did and tracked who got diabetes.
Right. And that distinction matters enormously here. Because when I started looking at who was eating the dark chocolate in this study, a pattern emerged that's really important.
Let me guess, it wasn't a random cross section of Americans sitting on their sofas eating dairy milk.
Not even close. The people eating dark chocolate had higher diet quality scores across the board. They ate more fruits, more vegetables, more tea, more red wine, exercised more. They were healthier in basically every measurable way.
So, the kind of person who buys expensive dark chocolate is also the kind of person who does yoga and eats kale salads.
Exactly. And here's the kicker: the study found the protective effect was strongest in people who already had the highest diet quality. In that group, the risk reduction was 34%, not 21%.
Hang on. So the chocolate works better if you're already eating healthy. That's that's just confounding, isn't it? That's not the chocolate. That's being a healthy person.
That's exactly what it suggests. And the study authors acknowledge this. They literally say in the paper, we cannot entirely rule out the role of confounding.
So when I see that headline saying dark chocolate reduces diabetes risk by 21%, what I'm actually seeing is people who eat dark chocolate are 21% less likely to get diabetes, which could just mean healthy people eat dark chocolate.
You got it. But there's another problem with that 21% figure that I think is even more misleading.
Go on.
It's a relative risk reduction, not an absolute risk reduction. And most people don't understand the difference.
Right, you're going to need to translate that for normal humans.
Okay, so in this study, the baseline diabetes incidence was about 4.3% of participants over the study period. If we're talking about a typical 5 year window for someone at average risk, their chance of developing diabetes might be around 1.5%.
Okay, so 1.5 out of 100 people.
Exactly. Now, a 21% relative risk reduction sounds massive, but what it actually means is your risk goes from 1.5% down to about 1.2%. The absolute risk reduction is 0.3%.
So less than 1 in 300 people would actually benefit.
Roughly, yes. But when you see 21% reduction in a headline, what does that sound like?
It sounds like 1 in 5 people are protected. It sounds massive. But you're telling me it's actually tiny.
This is exactly what research on health communication shows. People systematically overestimate relative risk reductions by a factor of 5 to 10 times. The media reported the 21% without any of that context.
Because eating dark chocolate might reduce your absolute diabetes risk by 0.3% doesn't get clicks.
No, it does not. But here's where this gets really interesting because there's another piece of evidence that basically blows this whole thing up.
I'm listening.
So, the study authors propose that the reason dark chocolate might reduce diabetes risk is because of compounds called flavanols, specifically one called epicatechin. These are the polyphenols in cocoa that have been shown in small studies to improve insulin sensitivity.
Okay, that's the mechanism. Chocolate contains these compounds that affect how your body processes sugar.
Right. So here's the thing, that exact mechanism was tested in a massive randomized controlled trial called Cosmos. Over 21,000 people. They gave half of them 500 milligrams of cocoa flavanols every day, including 80 milligrams of epicatechin, which is way more than you'd get from eating chocolate. And the other half got a placebo. Then they followed them for 3.5 years.
And
No effect on diabetes risk. The hazard ratio was 1.04 with a confidence interval that includes 1.0, meaning statistically, nothing happened.
wait, so they tested the proposed mechanism in a controlled trial with over 20,000 people and it didn't work.
Didn't work at all. And this trial is cited in the BMJ paper. The authors basically say, we found this association, but when the mechanism was tested in an RCT, it failed, and we don't know why there's a discrepancy.
That's that's pretty damning, isn't it? Because if the mechanism doesn't work when you actually test it properly, that suggests the observational association is confounded.
Exactly. It's classic evidence of confounding. When you observe people in the real world, healthy people eat dark chocolate and don't get diabetes. But when you actually give people the active compound in a controlled setting, it doesn't do anything.
So, what people are responding to in the real world is being the kind of person who chooses dark chocolate, not the chocolate itself.
That's what the evidence suggests. And there's one more thing that really drives this home. The same study found that milk chocolate consumption was associated with weight gain, but dark chocolate wasn't.
Right, because people eating milk chocolate are probably eating more of it, eating it differently, or have different overall habits.
Exactly. It's all about the context of who's eating what and why.
This is one of those cases where the headline creates a completely different impression than the actual science. Because when you see eating dark chocolate reduces diabetes risk by 21%, what you think is, I should start eating dark chocolate to prevent diabetes.
Right. But what the science actually shows is If you're already a health conscious person eating a high quality diet with lots of fruits and vegetables and exercise, and you occasionally eat dark chocolate instead of milk chocolate, you're probably fine. The chocolate isn't doing the heavy lifting, your overall lifestyle is.
And the people who most need diabetes prevention, people who are sedentary, eating poorly, overweight, they're not going to prevent diabetes by adding dark chocolate.
Correct. In fact, one of the doctors quoted in the CNN coverage said exactly that. Dr. Nestoris Mathiodakis from Johns Hopkins said he wouldn't recommend chocolate for glucose control based on this study and suggested people eat blueberries, pomegranates, apples, and tea instead if they want polyphenols.
Which makes sense because those foods give you the same compounds without the sugar and saturated fat.
Exactly. And to be fair to the researchers, they were relatively cautious in the paper. They acknowledged the limitations, mentioned the contradicting RCT, noted that most participants were white, educated, health conscious professionals.
But that nuance disappeared in the headlines.
Completely disappeared. Eating Well ran with good news for dark chocolate lovers and said when combined with other healthy habits, the risk decreases even more, which completely reverses the causality.
Because it's not that chocolate plus healthy habits equals extra protection, it's that healthy habits are the thing, and healthy people happen to eat dark chocolate.
Right. The subtitle literally implied the chocolate adds to the benefit of healthy habits, when the data actually shows the chocolate association only exists in people with healthy habits, which is evidence of confounding, not synergy.
So, what should people actually take away from this?
If you like dark chocolate and you're eating it in moderation, a serving a few times a week, and it's part of an overall healthy diet, there's no reason to stop. Dark chocolate is probably fine, maybe even slightly beneficial compared to milk chocolate.
But it's not a diabetes prevention strategy.
It's not a diabetes prevention strategy. The things that actually prevent diabetes, maintaining a healthy weight, exercising regularly, eating whole foods, managing stress, those are not replaced by eating chocolate.
And that 21% figure is misleading, both because it's relative risk and because it's likely just capturing who chooses to eat dark chocolate, not what the chocolate does.
Exactly. When the mechanism was tested properly in a randomized trial, it didn't work. That tells you most or all of that 21% is confounding.
This is one of those cases where I wish the media would just report what the study actually shows instead of what people want to hear.
I mean, healthy people eat dark chocolate and are healthy is not a great headline.
No, but it's honest. And honestly, people deserve to know the difference between this is associated with and this causes.
Agreed. And for listeners trying to evaluate these kinds of claims in the future, when you see a big percentage reduction from an observational study, ask two questions. What's the absolute risk reduction? And has this been tested in a randomized trial?
Because the absolute number tells you how much it actually matters to your personal risk, and the RCT tells you if it's causal or just correlation.
Exactly. In this case, the absolute risk is tiny, and the RCT says it doesn't work. So enjoy your dark chocolate if you like it, but don't eat it thinking it's medicine.
Brilliant. I'm keeping my dark chocolate, but I'm ditching the illusion that it's doing anything for my glucose levels.
That's the healthiest takeaway you could have.
Right, that's all for today's dive into the data. Just remember, everything we've discussed is our interpretation of published research and shouldn't replace professional medical advice.
Absolutely. If you're dealing with health or mental concerns, talk to your doctor, not just us data nerds on a podcast.
I'm Alex Barrett,
And I'm Bill Morrison
and we'll see you next time.
on Truth Seekers.
Until then, question everything.
But verify with data.